He built an empire out of nothing but grit and ambition. Every premium paid, every contract honored, every enemy underestimated. But just days after filing for divorce, billionaire DeShawn Caldwell vanished without a trace, along with nearly $3 billion that were supposed to be locked in untouchable trust accounts. His wife swears she's innocent. His board of directors calls it a strategic disappearance. And the police? They're still trying to figure out if DeShawn Caldwell walked away from it all, or if someone made sure he'd never walk anywhere again. If you think money buys safety, stay with me. By the time the story is done, you'll see how quickly loyalty turns into leverage, and how a missing man can drag an entire city into darkness. If you believe these stories matter, hit subscribe, because the louder we get, the harder it is for them to bury the truth. DeShawn Caldwell was a name that meant power in Atlanta. The son of a postal worker and a nurse, he grew up in a two-bedroom apartment on the city's south side and clawed his way into the Billionaires Club by sheer force of will. To the public, he was the perfect success story, a black entrepreneur who'd built Caldwell Enterprises into a multi-industry giant. To those who knew him, he was something else entirely. A man who never forgot the streets he came from, who donated millions to neighborhood schools, who funded shelters without putting his name on them. But in February of this year, everything changed. That was the month DeShawn filed for divorce from his wife, Alicia Caldwell. Alicia wasn't just his partner in life. She was his partner in business. Together, they controlled the kind of money that could rewrite elections. But if DeShawn's lawyers were to be believed, the divorce wasn't about money. It was about betrayal. And according to those same lawyers, he had proof. Yet before he could present it, he vanished. The last confirmed sighting of DeShawn Caldwell was at 11:37 p.m. on a Thursday night. Surveillance cameras captured him leaving his penthouse and getting into his black Escalade. The driver said he was headed to his private office. He never made it there. The next morning, Alicia Caldwell called the police to report him missing. Her voice on a 911 call was steady. Too steady, some would later argue. She told dispatch that her husband had been under tremendous stress and might have needed space. But what she didn't tell them was that within 24 hours of that call, almost $3 billion in Caldwell Enterprises liquid assets were quietly transferred, and the only person who had the clearance to move that kind of money was either DeShawn himself or Alicia. And Alicia Caldwell swore she hadn't touched a cent. Detective Miles Jordan didn't buy it. A veteran investigator with a reputation for exposing white-collar crime, he'd seen powerful families close ranks before. When people this rich start lying, he told a reporter, it's never about what they say. It's about what they don't say. And Alicia Caldwell wasn't saying much at all. She refused media interviews. She canceled board meetings. She locked down her husband's office and ordered every employee to sign new NDAs. To the public, it looked like a grieving wife holding the company together. But behind closed doors, Miles was hearing whispers of offshore accounts, burner phones, and a hidden security system inside DeShawn's private study that no one had been able to access. Then came the first break in the case. A security guard at Caldwell Tower came forward. He claimed that on the night DeShawn disappeared, he saw a second SUV pull into the private garage minutes after DeShawn's Escalade left. It was the same make, the same model, but the plates didn't match. He also claimed he saw Alicia there that night, long before she claimed to have been home. When Miles confronted her, Alicia didn't flinch. She simply said, "If you think I hurt my husband, you're out of your mind. I've spent 20 years building him up. Why would I tear all of that down?" It was a good question. But then came the second break, one that turned the case upside down. 3 days later, detectives found DeShawn's Escalade in an abandoned industrial lot on the edge of the city. No fingerprints, no blood, no sign of struggle. But hidden beneath the driver's seat was something no one expected. A torn piece of paper, its edges scorched like it had been burned and then crumpled. It was a fragment of a legal document, and on it, barely legible through the char, were 2 words: trust transfer. That single clue was enough to convince Detective Miles that DeShawn hadn't simply run away. If anything, It looked like he'd been setting up a trap, one that someone else had sprung first. And if Miles was right, Alicia wasn't the only one with something to hide. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that just days before his disappearance, DeShawn had met privately with a man named Gregory Tate, his longtime attorney and one of the few people he trusted implicitly. But Gregory Tate had a secret. 2 years ago, he'd been accused of siphoning funds from one of DeShawn's charitable foundations. The case was quietly settled. No charges, no headlines. But now, Gregory was gone too. His phone disconnected, his townhouse empty, and his last known GPS ping? The same industrial lot where DeShawn's Escalade had been found. It wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. It was a conspiracy. And if that wasn't enough, the financial trail told its own story. Of the $3 billion that vanished, nearly $2 billion ended up in a Cayman Islands account. The name on that account wasn't DeShawn Caldwell. It was Gregory Tate. By now, the public was in an uproar. Protesters lined the streets outside Caldwell Enterprises. "Where's DeShawn?" became the rallying cry. And yet, through it all, Alicia Caldwell stood at a podium, tears glistening in her eyes, insisting she had nothing to do with her husband's disappearance. But Detective Miles wasn't buying it. When he subpoenaed the company's private server logs, he found something Alicia's lawyers had fought to keep buried: a deleted email recovered from DeShawn's account, timestamped 48 hours before he vanished. It was addressed to one person. Subject line: "If anything happens to me." The recipient: Alicia Caldwell. And the body of the email contained just one line: "You already know who to blame." And that's when everything got worse. Because the next morning, another body turned up. It wasn't DeShawn. It was Gregory Tate, face down in the Chattahoochee River, his wrists bound, his phone smashed, and a single bullet in the back of his head, and in his jacket pocket, a key. A key that opened the hidden safe in DeShawn Caldwell's private study. Inside that safe, detectives found a ledger, hundreds of pages of transactions, coded notes, and one terrifying list of names. At the very bottom of that list was one name, circled in red ink, underlined twice: Alicia Caldwell. Detective Miles closed the safe and stared at the floor. If this ledger was real, it didn't just mean DeShawn was preparing for divorce. It meant he was preparing for war. And if Alicia found out he'd left proof, well, that might explain why no one's seen DeShawn Caldwell since. But here's the thing. Hours before police could secure the ledger as evidence, it vanished. And so did Alicia Caldwell. Alicia Caldwell was gone. The last known image of her came from a grainy security camera at an underground parking garage. 3:12 a.m. She wasn't running. She wasn't panicked. She walked out wearing a black coat and sunglasses at night, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Moments later, a dark sedan pulled up. The plates were stolen. The car never appeared on any traffic cameras again. And just like that, the wife of a missing billionaire vanished without a trace. Detective Miles Jordan didn't sleep for 2 days. Not when the ledger had disappeared too. Not when the press began circling like vultures. And certainly not when the board of Caldwell Enterprises announced an emergency meeting without inviting him. They called it a business matter. Miles called it what it was: a cover-up. But then, something strange happened. 2 hours after Alicia's disappearance hit the news, Miles received an unmarked envelope. No return address. Inside, there was a single USB drive and a handwritten note that simply read, "He left this for you." When Miles plugged it in, he expected financial records, maybe a confession. What he found was worse. The USB contained dozens of video files, all time-stamped in the weeks leading up to DeShawn Caldwell's disappearance. Most were security footage from his private office, footage even Alicia didn't seem to know existed. In one of the earliest videos, DeShawn sat at his desk, staring straight into the camera, his face drawn, exhausted. "If you're watching this," he said, "then I didn't make it. And if I didn't make it, you need to know this isn't about money. It never was. It's about them. And if Alicia's involved, it's because they gave her no choice." Them. He never said who they were, but in the background of another video, A shadow moved across the frosted glass of his office door. A man's voice, deep, commanding, said, "You're running out of time, Caldwell. Sign it, or you'll wish you had." The video cut out. The next file was dated 2 nights before DeShawn vanished. This time, he looked terrified. His hands trembled as he typed something on a laptop. Then, without warning, he closed it and leaned toward the camera. "If they come for me," he whispered. "Check the ledger. Page 47. It's all there." Page 47. The very ledger that had been stolen from his safe. Miles clenched his jaw. Whatever was on that page wasn't just valuable, it was dangerous. And if Alicia had run, maybe she'd taken it with her. Or maybe someone took her to make sure she never talked. 3 days later, the case exploded. A whistleblower from Caldwell Enterprises came forward. Jamal Briggs, DeShawn's former head of cybersecurity. Jamal had been fired 6 months ago after warning DeShawn that someone inside the company was manipulating financial data. He claimed DeShawn believed him, but before he could investigate, the board forced Jamal out, and Jamal had receipts. He showed Miles a copy of an encrypted email chain between DeShawn and Alicia. It wasn't love letters. It wasn't divorce negotiations. It was strategy. In those emails, Alicia begged DeShawn not to confront them until he had everything locked down. DeShawn's last reply sent chills through Miles' spine. Too late. They already know. Meanwhile, the media was turning on Alicia. She ran. She stole the money. She killed him. But Miles wasn't so sure. He pulled up Alicia's last phone records. One call stood out. A 47-second conversation to a prepaid number traced to a storage facility on the edge of town. When police raided it, they found something that blew the case wide open. In a rusted locker, hidden behind boxes of old company files, there was a fireproof briefcase. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was the missing page 47 from DeShawn's ledger. And written across the top, in DeShawn's handwriting, was a single phrase: the Syndicate. Beneath it, a list of names, judges, politicians, executives. And at the very bottom, a company logo: Caldwell Enterprises. That night, Miles drove straight to his office, the city buzzing with the sound of helicopters and news vans. He didn't even turn on the lights. He just sat there, staring at that page. If DeShawn had uncovered proof that his own company was being used to launder money for a shadow network of power brokers, then maybe he hadn't disappeared because of Alicia. Maybe he disappeared because of them. And if Alicia was running, maybe it wasn't to escape justice. Maybe it was to survive it. But the deeper Miles dug, the clearer it became. Someone was watching him too. It started with small things. His computer password resetting itself. A black SUV parked outside his house at 2 a.m. Then, one night, a manila envelope slid under his door. No note, just a single photograph. Alicia Caldwell, sitting in the back seat of a car, blindfolded. Miles knew what that meant. Alicia hadn't run. She'd been taken. And if the Syndicate had her, it was only a matter of time before they silenced her forever. But the photograph had a clue the Syndicate didn't notice. The reflection in the car window. A street sign. One that led straight to an abandoned shipping yard on the outskirts of Savannah. Miles didn't wait for a warrant. He drove there himself alone. Headlights off. Gun in his lap. The yard was empty. No guards. No cameras. Just a single warehouse with its door cracked open. Inside there was a chair. And on that chair a phone. When he picked it up, the screen lit up with a single video file. He pressed play. Alicia's voice came through, trembling, desperate. "Miles, if you're seeing this, they've already found me. Don't trust anyone on the board. Don't trust the police. DeShawn, he's alive. But you have to find the black ledger before they do. It's the only thing keeping him breathing." The video ended. And then, from the shadows behind him, a deep voice spoke. "You shouldn't have come here, detective." Miles spun around and froze, because the man standing in the doorway was DeShawn Caldwell. For a moment, Detective Miles Jordan couldn't move. DeShawn Caldwell, the billionaire the world believed was dead, stood just a few feet away, framed in the faint glow of the warehouse lights. He looked nothing like the man from the news photos. His once polished suit was replaced by a plain black hoodie and jeans. His face was gaunt, his beard unkempt, and his sharp eyes carried the weight of a man who had been running for far too long. "DeShawn," Miles whispered. "Keep your voice down," DeShawn said. "They're watching everything." Miles gripped his gun tighter. "You're supposed to be dead." DeShawn gave a bitter smile. "Dead is safer than rich." The two men stood in tense silence until DeShawn motioned toward the phone in Miles's hand. "You saw the video?" Miles nodded. "Alicia. She said you're alive. She said something about a black ledger." DeShawn cut him off. "Not here. We move. Now." Before Miles could protest, DeShawn pressed a small device into his hand. "A signal jammer. They can trace everything," he said. "Phones, cars, credit cards. You want to walk out of here alive? You follow me." And Miles did. They drove through back roads until the city disappeared in the rearview mirror. Finally, DeShawn pulled into an abandoned farmhouse, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Inside, there were no lights, just candles and stacks of paper, binders, and laptops with their cameras taped over. "This," DeShawn said, gesturing to the clutter, "is why I vanished." Miles scanned the room. Documents covered every surface. Bank statements, shell companies, political donations, wire transfers. And then he saw it. A black leather-bound book, sitting in the center of the table. The Black Ledger. "This is what they killed Gregory Tate for," DeShawn said, his voice low but steady. "And if they find out you're holding it, they'll come for you too." Miles opened the ledger, flipping to the pages DeShawn had marked in red ink. Every line was a weapon. Judges, CEOs, elected officials, all tied to offshore accounts that traced back to Caldwell Enterprises. "They used my company," DeShawn said. "At first, I thought it was just tax shelters. Then I realized they were laundering money for something much bigger. Private prisons, black market arms, even payoffs to law enforcement." Miles's chest tightened. "You're saying this syndicate runs the city?" DeShawn laughed bitterly. "The city? Miles, they run the country." Miles looked up. "Then why fake your death? Why not go public?" DeShawn leaned closer, his voice dropping, "Because the last man who tried didn't live long enough to regret it." Miles remembered Gregory Tate, the bullet in the back of his head. "They told me to sign everything over," DeShawn continued. "Make it look clean, quiet, then disappear. But I didn't. I moved the money first. $3 billion they'll never touch. I left the ledger as insurance. And Alicia," he paused. For the first time, his voice cracked. "She was supposed to run with me, but they got to her first." Miles swallowed hard. "She's alive. I've seen proof." DeShawn's eyes sharpened. "Then they're using her. And if they're using her, that means they don't have the ledger yet. That buys us time." Miles shook his head. "Time for what?" DeShawn leaned forward, and the candlelight threw sharp shadows across his face, to burn them down from the inside. The plan was insane. According to DeShawn, the Syndicate's power wasn't just in money. It was in secrets. The Black Ledger wasn't just proof of their crimes. It was their chokehold on every powerful person they owned. And now, with the ledger in their hands, Miles and DeShawn held the only weapon that could bring them down. But it came with a cost. "If we do this," DeShawn warned, "there's no going back. They'll come after us, Miles. They'll come after anyone we care about. You ready for that?" Miles didn't answer. Not because he was unsure, because he already knew his answer. He'd seen the names in that ledger. He'd seen the judges who'd signed off on wrongful convictions, the police chiefs who'd buried evidence, the politicians who smiled for cameras while selling their cities out from the inside. If this was his only shot to tear it all down, he'd take it. They didn't get the chance. Because just as DeShawn was explaining the first step of his plan, the farmhouse lights flickered, then died. DeShawn froze. "Get down," he hissed. A second later, glass shattered. A bullet ripped through the window, embedding itself in the wall inches from Miles's head. They weren't alone. DeShawn grabbed the ledger, stuffing it into a waterproof bag. "Back door," he said. Miles followed him through the kitchen and out into the woods. Gunfire erupted behind them, a sound tearing through the quiet night. Whoever was shooting wasn't there to scare them. They were there to finish the job. When they reached DeShawn's truck, he shoved the ledger into Miles's hands. "If I don't make it, you're not dying," Miles snapped. DeShawn gave him a grim smile. "I already did once." They sped down the back roads, headlights off, while the black SUVs behind them gave chase. Miles clutched the ledger so tightly his knuckles went white. Then DeShawn said something that chilled him to his core. "You remember page 89? Miles frowned. "What about it?" "That's the page they'll kill for next." Miles flipped it open, and there, circled in red, was a single name. Detective Miles Jordan. The blood drained from his face. "They know you're helping me," DeShawn said, "and they don't leave loose ends." Miles stared down at the ledger, his mind spinning. His name wasn't just on the page. It was under a category labeled pending clearance. "What does that mean?" Miles asked. DeShawn didn't answer. Instead, he slammed his foot on the gas, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "They've marked you, Miles, and if we don't move fast." He glanced in the rearview mirror. "You're next." To be continued, because the next move in this deadly game won't just decide if DeShawn Caldwell survives. It'll decide if Detective Miles Jordan lives long enough to expose the truth. Watch out for part 2.